Oh my goodness, thank you. Is this the part where I say I'm a private person? It's a little late, right? Okay. Before I begin on my unfinished journey, I want to thank Noelle for reminding me that yes to God is awesome. I want to thank Erica for her light, her humor, kindness, and overflowing compassion. And then there are people they get, I'm a word and music girl. They get an exclamation point. That's Hannah. I just can't put words next to Hannah. Whoa. Okay, here's my story. On January 29th, 2020, I learned that my hearing loss, originally diagnosed in 2014, was the result of nerve damage, and surgery could not repair it. I learned that it was not a figment of my imagination, that deciphering what was said to me had become increasingly difficult. I learned that without hearing aids in both ears, I had moved through the areas of normal hearing and impairment for direct conversation to bordering on total deafness of speech. An example of how my hearing is impacted, and you can laugh, okay? I listen to Moody Radio Cleveland, specifically in the mornings to the Brian and Janelle show. Yeah. Ron, another staffer there, provides the news and the weather. He recently began his segment called More Ron Moments, and he shares some interesting facts with the audience, the radio audience. When the segment first began, I was usually rushing around trying to get myself and my daughter off to school and work on time. And I heard the introduction. This is what I heard. Next is More Ron Moments. I thought to myself, that title does not seem to be very sensitive. And I listened to the interesting facts. I wonder, why would he think these facts were associated with being a moron? Each day passed, and then I started to think about Brian and Janelle. And I thought, I am sure they have team meetings. And I don't know them personally, but it would seem as though they would have protested a title with the word moron in it. Specifically, since a moron is a stupid person, and they seem so respectful. After the fourth time of hearing moron moments, I stopped and I asked my daughter, Teresa, what is the name of Ron's segment? Well, my 16-year-old daughter has been around me and knew when I usually ask this question, it usually means I don't trust my ears. She said, Mom, what did you hear? I said, moron moments. She could not stop laughing. I was not laughing. In between her laughter, she said, Mom, more Ron moments. I said, that makes sense. I need to see your face in order to have a conversation with you. I am an educator. How do I do what I do with profound hearing loss and a strong possibility of becoming deaf? I am still parenting a 16-year-old. I love music and, of course, talk radio. I mourned in a way that I had not in 2014 when I was originally diagnosed with some hearing loss. I remember feeling so embarrassed because of how much I cried throughout that meeting with the ear specialist. I cried all the way home. For the next week, sorrow surrounded me and wrapped me so tight that I couldn't breathe. And then, my life is filled with and then. And it always follows with God reminding me who I am, and then I remember. I remember the scripture that I was supposed is the key word here, to have memorized in January as part of my commitment to memorize a scripture per month. The scripture was Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. In the midst of my sorrow, I began to remember I have history with God. I want to share 3 defining moments that removed the power of sorrow from surrounding me. My first defining moment. On August 10th, 2002, I married my best friend in New Rochelle, New York. We had been amazing friends for years. He was my heart. Most people thought we were dating way before we were actually dating. When we were first married, I know you have those experiences, right? When we were first married, I remember so many comments about how happy we looked. I remember my single, sophisticated New York friends commenting about how happy Eric looked throughout the ceremony. I remember laughing because they were so surprised. Why wouldn't he be happy? He's marrying me, right? Prior to our marriage and when our friendship was developing, I learned my best friend was a recovering alcoholic and had been sober for many years. Early in our marriage, he relapsed, and then another relapse, and then another. Quickly, alcohol replaced the priority of his wife and by then his daughter. Disappearing for days at a time, he lost his job. Strange people began visiting our apartment because he borrowed money to support his habit. And he told them his wife would pay his debt, and she did. Middle of the night calls from an emergency room physician stating his head had been bashed in, and during one of his disappearing acts. And. This is a little funny, but not so good. I remember. It was Father's Day. I don't remember the details. What I remember was I had our infant daughter on my hip. So I had her and I was leaning. I remember that. And I was standing at the top of the stairs leading to the parking lot where he was walking to his car. And this Christian woman used curse words like I had used them every day of my life, and I don't. I was loud and they were good. It was quite early in the morning, and I was shouting at the top of my lungs. I spoke to the person I loved without any honor or respect. I had no regards for neighbors, and I definitely had no regards for God. I was absolutely unraveling. Even though I was experiencing these dark moments in my life, I turned off this part of my life when I went to work and socialized with friends. I had an amazing job and amazing friends. I had a pretty cool life. The 2 parts of my life began to collide. I had a wonderful woman who would come to our home and watch our daughter while I worked. I came home one evening and she informed me that my husband had taken all the food from our house, and she seemed scared for me and scared for herself. I was scared for me. It became increasingly difficult to care for myself and especially my small child. One early morning, I was drinking coffee, thinking. Our daughter was sleeping. My husband had disappeared again. The outside was not aligned with my insides. My insides were shattered. As I sat drinking coffee, I decided that I was too fragile to care for my daughter. I thought, maybe I should put her in foster care. My training is social work, so I knew, even if others were unaware, I was a mess. My ability to problem solve the most basic problems had become quite impossible. Even though I was thinking that would be my next steps, I heard a voice say, "Go home." I remember looking around fearful that someone was in our apartment. I heard the voice again, and this time in my head, I said, "No." Go home was returning to Ohio. I did not want to return to Ohio. I loved living and working in New York City. I loved that I had found a place for misfits, and I felt like a misfit most of the time. You could be different, and it was viewed as interesting, not necessarily weird. I loved my life, and even though my marriage was in shambles, I did not feel that it was fair that I had to leave my home to return to a place that I felt at the time did not seem to value diversity of people, diversity of thought, of dreaming big. I remember quietly sobbing, and then the phone rang. It was about 2 a.m., which is usually when I do all my thinking. And I hear, "Hey, baby." That's how my sister talks. It was my sister, Marg. Can you believe this? I said, "I'm coming home." She thought I meant to visit, and when I said for good, there was silence. I came home. End of 2007, I shifted, because that's what I do. A shift for me is moving on. The pain, the hurt, the event is placed in a quiet place, and I don't go there anymore. I did not have time for the quiet place. I needed to start my career again in a new city, even though it was my birthplace. I needed to be able to care for my daughter, who was a small child. I began to work feverishly on rebuilding and developing financial security for my family. I divorced my husband, moved into the quiet place. I learned that he had died. I moved into the quiet place. I needed to take care of my daughter. I had no time for distractions. The only thing I asked from God was to not allow bitterness to enter and grow in my heart. He honored my request. I don't remember a scripture during this time, but I remember a song, and I played and I sang it over and over. It was Rescue, I Need You. And some of the words was, you're the source of life, and I can't be left behind. No one else would do. I will take hold of you. And I just remember playing and reading it over and over. 2002 was my second defining moment. It was Thanksgiving with my family in Cleveland. I was outside hugging and saying goodbye to family members. I'm usually the last one to leave family gatherings. And I didn't realize that my 8-year-old daughter, well, at the time, was in the house being hurt by a distant family member. My anger and hurt almost consumed me. I remember the next morning, either before or after filing the police report, I went to the home of the family who hurt my child. With my child in the back seat, and I knocked and rang the doorbell because I wanted to hurt someone. They did not answer, thank goodness. So this Christian woman, again, screamed at the top of her lungs what their teenage grandson had done to her kid. Things get a little fuzzy for me here, even though I tried to remember it. I believe I threw rocks and the police were called. All I remember is the hurt that I did not protect my child, and my family did not provide me with information to make an informed decision to protect her. Being with family, being in their house was excruciating. I handled it, I shifted, I put the event in my quiet place. I asked God to not allow this event to define my child's life and interfere with who she was supposed to become. He honored this request. I tried to remember a song or scripture that stood out for me during this time, and I just haven't been able to. My third and final defining moment, 2013, my dream job. Tenure track position at the local university, and from 2008 to 2013, I sacrificed everything to obtain financial job security for my family. I felt this was okay because I would then earn the coveted promotion, tenured professor in academia. My life centered on doing above and beyond what was needed in my school in order to obtain this promotion. I did not get the promotion. I was informed that because my work was good and I was so well respected, I was offered a non-tenured position. Other academic professionals and friends who were Christ followers reminded me that yes, it was okay to be disappointed. However, God was still looking out for me because he provided me with a job. On the outside, I pretended. I pretended to be appreciative. I truly pretended. My heart was broken, and I felt as though I was supposed to be happy receiving the B prize. I was not the kind of person who walked through the world looking to achieve the B version. I tend to always go for the top prize. In my heart, I was disappointed, embarrassed. I felt shame. I felt as though I missed the mark. I shifted and placed the event and the feelings, and you know where? The quiet place. I asked God to allow me to continue to do good work and exhibit integrity, compassion, and fun. He honored my request. However, something had changed, and the effort I was putting into work was not producing the outcomes. God continued to honor my request, even as I began to feel like the woman who was sitting many years before, sitting at the table in the middle of the night, wondering if she could parent her child. I remember the song that I played and I sang during this time, Let It Rain. Let me return to my loss of hearing. I want to hear. I don't hear very well. I really hate missing out on conversations. It is so hard when I leave work as an educator because I am on overdrive, trying to ensure I don't miss anything that interferes with a student's learning. This is what I was afraid of. Okay. I am aware that unless God intervenes, my condition will most likely get worse. Today, I am unclear how I am going to do what I do, what I love. What I do have is history with God. I do know that God has honored all my requests, and even requests I did not know I needed. Yes, that is a big clap. That is. He honors requests and ones that you don't even ask for, because he's done so many wonderful things. So first defining moment, he honored my request by not allowing bitterness to enter my heart. He honored a request that I did not make, but a promise he made to his children. He used this presentation to you to take me to my quiet place and mourn. He gave me permission to not be strong, and in my weakness, he freed me, and he is continuing to free me. When I look at my daughter, I see her father, and my heart not only smiles, my heart laughs. Second defining moment, on March 9th, 2014, my daughter gave her life to Christ, and I was there. Yeah. She was 11 years old. This young lady is so full of light, compassion, laughter, and joy that it unintentionally expands and reminds me that God is always in control, and he got this. Third defining moment, an opportunity became available to take a buyout for my dream job. I took it. I am relieved, and even though I'm also sad, God is working with me on this too. He allowed me to have a year and not worrying about how to financially care for my kid. He knows this is important to me. He honored this importance. What I do know is when I focus on God, he honors that. I called my older sister, Teresa, when sorrow was tightening its grip around me. After our phone call, she sent me this card, and I just want to read it to you. She said, "Dear Naomi, I'm sad that the doctor said your hearing is getting worse. I felt sad. My thoughts were sad, sad, sad." She is definitely another educator. Then I remembered the song that said, "God has the last say. It doesn't matter what anyone or anything is said. It only matters what God says." He said, "Be still and know that I am God." God has the last say. Let's just keep praying, keep trusting, keep looking up and see what God says. He also says, "I will never leave you and forsake you." He says, "The plans I have for you are nothing but good." God said he will move heaven and earth for his children. My joy has been restored. This is all in his hands. Thank you. I got a lot of paper.